Hello and welcome. I'm Kamla. My guest today is the Indian ambassador to the US, Ambassador Nirupama Rao. We bring you a two-part interview with her. In part one, she talks about the opening of the US-India relationship and how it has evolved. Ambassador Rao was the first woman to serve as India's ambassador to China, and in 2011, she was appointed as India's ambassador to the United States. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kamla. It's great to be here.
So, you're coming back to the US after 20 years.
Almost 20 years. I was serving in our embassy in Washington in the mid-90s, between 1993 and 1995 to be exact. And from there I went to the other America, South America, as our ambassador to Peru.
So in 92, 93, when you served your term in DC, that was the time when India opened up its economy, when the liberalization process started. What was it like for you being at the helm or the thick of things in the early 90s?
Well, I happened to be the Minister for Press Affairs at the Embassy of India in Washington at that time. And it was a very different place, a very different era, and a very different relationship between India and the United States. The Cold War had ended, of course, but the residual estrangements percolating down from that period still tended to influence the interaction and the relationship between our two countries. But people were already wakening up to the potential of the Indian economy and just the size of India, the proportions of the potential that India offered to the world. So I was witness, for instance, to the setting up of an India interest group in Washington, headed by Michael Gadbois of General Electric. And people were talking about investing in India. We were engaged in a lot of investment promotion activity. Our ambassador at that time, Ambassador Ray, Siddharth Shankar Ray, would travel the length and breadth of the country talking about India, talking about our democracy. And so it was a period of opening up, I think, in the relationship. And the voice of the Indian American community was just beginning to be heard in many ways. I mean, they were becoming influential, they were visible. And another important development that occurred at that time was the establishment of the India Caucus in the House of Representatives. And I was witness to that also. So all in all, I think it was a good experience in every sense of the word. And it taught me a great deal about, not only about the relationship, about US media, about US views of India, what we needed to tackle in terms of the stereotypes that often surfaced in reporting about India. And I found it fascinating. And in fact, it drew me, therefore, to trying to understand more deeply the language of communication.
Fast forward to the 21st century, where is the India-US relationship? What are some of the mutual interests and where is it going?
Today, the India-US relationship is a defining partnership, as President Obama spoke about it when he came to India in November 2 years ago. It's a defining partnership. It is a partnership that is very much rooted in the world of the 21st century. And why do I say that? It is because it is so multifaceted, this partnership today. It not only covers bilateral interaction, whether it is security or counterterrorism or leadership level dialogue or cooperation on energy, agriculture, education, science and technology, consular issues. You know, we have a dialogue that encompasses beyond the bilateral. It goes into regional issues. We talk about the situation in East Asia, the world of the Indian Ocean, what is happening in the Middle East, in Central Asia. We cooperate in the United Nations. So it's a relationship that is structured at so many levels and has grown far, far beyond anything we imagined in the mid-90s. And there is this constant communication, this dialogue, this interaction between India and the United States. It's a maturing relationship. It is a level of maturity today that you see in this relationship that if we were speaking, having this conversation in the mid-90s, we would have found difficult to believe.
So is that why you mentioned in one of your blog postings that the India-US relationship is undergoing a silent revolution? Uh,
Very much so.
what is it that we don't know, we the observers who read newspapers and blogs and tweets?
Yes.
What is it that we don't know?
Well, I think what is sometimes escapes the normal field of vision is the breadth of this relationship, just the spectrum of what we do between India and the United States, the investments that take place from each other's country in the other, the role of the Indian American community in the United States, the level of interest in US academia about India. I always say to my friends in US universities that please study India in depth, more profoundly than you have done before. And I think that is beginning to happen in many, many key US universities. There's a great deal of interest about India, and the Indian American community has also helped spur this on. I mean, the visibility of India in the United States is so much more than it was before. I mean, even in show business and entertainment, you know, there are Indian characters in TV sitcoms, and, you know, whatever it may be, there may be stereotypes overlaid into all this. But somehow people are beginning to, you know, recognize that there is a world out there and India is a big part of it.
So
I feel there's less insularity in the US today about getting to know other countries, and particularly about India.
We're going to touch a little bit on technology, because you raised the point about reading, about how technology has changed the world for you. But you grew up at a time when world vision, when there was a world view, which was very different.
That's right.
You did have an interest in Western music, you read authors from around the world. The only thing you didn't have was Google, you didn't have internet, you didn't have YouTube.
Yeah.
But fast forward 40 years, and all that is in your fingertips, as you point out today. How has the world changed since you joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1973 as a diplomat?
The world has changed immeasurably, not only for the world, but also for India. And so that really, what it means is that when it comes to our foreign policy, when it comes to the challenges that face our diplomats, when it comes to the priorities that India has, when it comes to our neighborhood and our region, our relationship with the big powers, all that has changed. Apart from the world, just the feel and texture of the world changing. So I think it's a matter of great privilege. I consider myself greatly privileged to have been witness to the changes that have occurred since 1973, when I joined the Foreign Service. I mean, unimaginable, immeasurable change.
And you touched upon a word that is probably not heard of these days, and a lot of kids don't know, Cold War. So you came into the world of diplomacy in 73 at the height of Cold War.
Yes. And I came soon after the liberation of Bangladesh, you know, after the Indo-Pak War of 1971, the Simla Conference. And so that was we had the oil crisis of 1973.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Where were you when it happened?
I was in Delhi. I was in, and there was the war in the Middle East that September, in which I lost somebody I knew quite well, a very talented young Indian classical dancer who died, who was caught in the fighting and died.
So how has it changed for you, in the sense, in terms of diplomacy, with technology being available at everybody's fingertips and information being there? And you're on Twitter.
Yes, I am.
And you are identified as one of the 100 most powerful women on Twitter by foreignpolicy.com.
Yes, that was a few months ago, yes.
Do you tweet yourself?
I do. And when I think of the world in 140 characters, I mean, that's the difference from 1973. You have to learn the language of very condensed, very, you know, very sort of cryptic, in a sense cryptic and haiku-like communication. Very different from, you know, when we wrote our exams for the civil service, one of the papers was an essay, you know, in so many thousands of words. And I think of life today and the use of social media, and when you have to be able to project what you have to say in a very syncopated fashion, which is what Twitter is all about. But I enjoy it. It's something like writing a telegram.
Who
You
knows?
remember? We wrote telegrams.
Yes.
I don't know if you do.
Yes, I remember telegrams.
Yes, and you had to make sure you were very economical with the words and you put across the message effectively. You know.
So for you, there is an instant connect because since you're interested in poetry,
Yes.
and you know the heart of writing in brief.
I think we are also taught to be very brief and concise when we have to get decisions taken, when we have to make policy papers, when we have to put forward options. So it is a part of what we do.
But is there any truth to the verbose part of it, of bureaucrats being long-winded?
I think there's been a kind of mythology that has been built up about bureaucracy. I mean, you see it in literature. You see it in the Russian literature, for instance, with the Inspector General. And I think that's the kind of, the associations that have been built up about bureaucracy and about delays and about decisions taking a long time. But that does not describe, I believe, the bureaucracy fairly. Doesn't describe what we do, because today we understand that we are connected very, very intimately with the outside world. We don't work in ivory towers. We are not shut away in our little cabins and cells from what is happening in the outside world. You know, when we go out of our offices, if something has happened which is of a crisis nature or an emergency nature, you'll find a TV crew waiting outside with microphones asking you to react. So this is the age of instant reaction, and where decisions have to be taken very, very quickly because lives are involved or because there is a crisis situation to be addressed. So I think, that old image of a file-pushing bureaucrat doesn't really obtain when you come to observe what we actually do in the world of bureaucracy today and how interconnected we are with chambers of commerce in diplomacy, for instance, or with academia, or with people at large. I always like to think of myself as a citizen diplomat. You know,
a citizen diplomat because you're reaching out to
people, and people are at the heart of what we do, and I think every bureaucrat must make that his or her creed. I think it's very important to keep that in mind, that people are really at the heart of what we need to do, what we must do, and we must be seen to be responsive to the needs of people.
So is that surprising to hear from a diplomat, or is it you, because you studied literature and you seem to be drawn to culture, music and all of that, and has that recognition come out of your own personal experience that people are at the heart?
Yes, I guess as a person I've always enjoyed reaching out to people, trying to understand them, and I think we have to incorporate within what we do that basic sensitivity also, that ability to respond, because I think as humans we are wired to do that by nature. We are wired to respond, to be instinctive, to sense what is happening around us, and we cannot afford to lose that, even if we are bureaucrats or even if we occupy privileged positions in government or in public service.
So you believe in citizens being ambassadors of their own culture or their own country?
Oh yes, every person from India, or for that matter any country, who lives outside his or her country is a virtual ambassador.
So let's come to the question of global economy. No matter where we live in the world today, we've all felt the shrinking of the global economy.
Yeah.
And here in America, there's a lot of concern about outsourcing jobs to India. Tell us if and how India has helped in creating jobs in the US.
Yes, that's another untold story. We just spoke about what is it that people don't know. Just apart from the statistics of trade between India and the United States.
Which is about $1 billion?
About
100 billion.
100 billion last year, and still growing, and enormous potential there. But there is the story of Indian investments in the United States. Just as, we know a lot of the big US companies are present in India, and they do good business here and have done so for some years now. But increasingly, many Indian and big industrial names are investing in the United States, and they're present today, I think, in at least 43 of the US states. So spread all over the country, and not just in ICT, but in many other manufacturing related areas. And they work with local communities where they are placed. They work with schools, with local universities, a lot of CSR duties that they perform. They create jobs, and they create hundreds of thousands of jobs in the United States, both directly and indirectly. So the numbers go into 300,000, 400,000 jobs that the Indian companies have been able to create in the United States, and about, I think, 27 billion US dollars invested by Indian companies in the US.
Are there any names that you can share of Indian companies?
Well, a lot of the big IT companies are there. Tata's is, of course, a big name. And TCS, for instance, has set up one of its big research and development centers in Santa Clara, I think, recently. They're in the Midwest. We have a number of Indian companies that have established themselves in the US. Apart, there are the IT companies they have a two-way traffic, not only individual startups, but also the big names, Infosys, Wipro, TCS I just mentioned. They're all present in the United States and doing good business.
What are the opportunities for American businessmen in India?
Well, the opportunities for American businessmen in India are enormous, as you would have seen from the debate surrounding multi-brand retail. I mean, the Walmarts and others, they look at the Indian market as being one of huge potential. It's just the size of the economy and the size of our population, and that India is a big consumer market because it's very domestically driven, the consumer demand in this country. So there is a lot of opportunity, particularly in manufacturing, because with the announcement of the new manufacturing policy by the government of India, and we want to raise the proportion of manufacturing in our GDP much more than it is today, to about 26-27% of our GDP. So look at the opportunities. I also see opportunities in education, in the setting up of community colleges, particularly because higher education is going to be an area of fast growth in India.
And American
yes,
companies and universities.
American universities particularly. And once the higher education bill goes through Parliament, then the way will be opened up even further. But already there is a lot of cooperation taking place in higher education. Infrastructure is a key area for our development in roads, in airports, in bridges, in public transportation networks, and also in energy. I think that is another very, very important area for India because our energy requirements are enormous. A good proportion of our population is not yet serviced adequately in terms of energy availability. So just in power generation, in solar energy, in wind energy, in second generation biofuels, in building, in energy efficiency in buildings, because our urbanization process is going to pick up and become much faster than ever before. So
a lot of opportunities for American and especially Californian companies then.
Absolutely. In fact, the whole ecosystem in California in terms of industry, in academia, in entertainment, in the arts, California is unique in many ways in terms of the opportunities that it offers for business ties between India and California.
And agriculture. I see
exactly.
I see California almonds when I go to India.
And we just lowered the duty on Californian pistachios, which was something that many congressmen from California would speak to me about when I would meet them. So we have Californian pistachios besides Californian almonds. But if you look at Californian wine, not just exporting wine, but in terms of technology, in terms of winemaking, I think that would be something of great interest for Indian businesses. And because our wine industry is just, taking off, it has become much more, visible and accepted than it was ever before. So that's another area for collaboration, apart from the Silicon Valley connections between India and California.
So you touched upon a very interesting subject, higher education, and you yourself have experienced the American higher education system. You went to Harvard, you spent a year at Harvard.
That's right.
And I guess that was one of the first things you did when you became the ambassador in 2011 was
Yes.
to organize a
The Higher
symposium.
Education Summit we
Summit,
had,
yes.
Yeah.
So what are the key points that came out of there, and what would be the opportunities for American universities to go work in India?
Well, I think faculty development is one key area. Apart from research, we have the Singh Obama, that is Dr. Manmohan Singh, Barack Obama Knowledge Initiative, under which there are a lot of projects that have been announced for educational collaboration at the research institution level. Then there is also the issue of faculty development, because as the Indian higher education sector grows and we need to people our faculties with teachers and academicians with that level of expertise, there will be opportunities for training of our faculty in the United States, which we have worked on, and the first batch is just going to undergo that kind of training. Plus the community colleges, because again, when you have to train our young people, the demographic dividend of India, most of our population is below the age of 25. So to train people who are young kids and our children who have gone through schooling, 12 years of schooling, and before they enter the job market, to equip them with the skills that they need for the job market, to integrate with local industries. And the experience that the United States has had in this field, in the field of community colleges, is of interest to us. And there is a community college conference that we are holding here in India early this year in 2013, which will bring educators from the community college sector in the United States to India. And I think this whole concept of online education, the whole concept of massive online open courses, the MOOCs and the open courseware, the way it has opened up the world literally to young people is something that our young people should also avail of, because it completely redefines the concept of the university. And with fiber optic connectivity coming to 250,000 villages in India, which is our government's plan and goal, the ability for people, young people, to connect with the outside world will grow enormously. So this is going to be another information revolution, literally.
Do they keep tabs on you via Twitter then?
No, I'm the only one in my family on Twitter. They're very conservative, I think, with the rest of the family, and they're all men, and I'm the only woman in the family, but I seem to be the most keyed in to social media.
How did you get into Twitter?
I've always been interested in media, in communication. I'm fascinated by the whole business of communication and language of communication. So when the Libya crisis occurred in 2011, and we had thousands of Indians who had to be evacuated, and it was a huge operation, Safe Homecoming, that we launched. So at that time I felt that many people stranded inside Libya, in towns like Misrata and away from even Tripoli, the only way we could communicate with them was via Twitter. And so I got onto Twitter for that reason, because as Foreign Secretary I felt I was responsible for these people, and I had to be able to tell them, help is at hand, we are arranging this and that, this special flight or this ship, and our embassy will be doing this for you. And Twitter worked greatly. It helped greatly for me to
Public
communicate.
telegram service.
Exactly, a public telegram service, literally, a bush telegraph, you could call it.
Is that what you called it? Bush
No,
telegram?
I didn't call it that,
okay.
but it was like a bush telegram, literally, because this is the only way we could communicate. So that's how I got onto Twitter. And once I got onto it, I found that lots of people began to follow me, and they were interested in knowing what government had to say on this issue, or some problem had cropped up somewhere. They wanted a reaction from us. So it helped, I think, to place our point of view and put forward our perspective at the right time, in real time, as it were. So I kept, and I said that's what being a citizen diplomat is all about.
Have you influenced any other of your colleagues to embrace Twitter in the diplomatic service?
I have encouraged a number of my colleagues to also be on Twitter, and there are quite a number now who also are on social media. I think it's an enormously powerful tool, and you have to use it, of course, with a lot of thought, and you have to weigh your words carefully, because once you press the send or tweet button, you know, it's not possible to retract it. So I've sort of internalized that now. It's become a little easier for me. But all the same, that doesn't you know, negate the need to be cautious and to always be very, very thoughtful and cautious about what you say.
Ambassador Rao, it's been a pleasure having you on this show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Kamla.
Thank you for watching. We'll be back again with another show. Until then, goodbye.